Have you ever stopped to think about what it actually takes to run an election for almost a billion people? I mean, really think about it. That's the challenge India faces every time it holds a general election. This isn't just another vote, it's the single biggest democratic event on the entire planet. So how on earth do they pull it off? Let's get into it.
Just to wrap your head around the sheer scale of this thing, we're talking about 912 million eligible voters. To put that in perspective, that's like combining the entire populations of the United States and the European Union and then asking them all to vote on the same day. It's an absolutely mind-boggling logistical operation.
You know, it really is a marvel of organization, but it's also a deeply complex system with its own set of rules, its own structures, and its own pretty serious challenges. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack the machinery of the Indian election. We'll look at how your vote actually turns into political power, who the referees are keeping things fair, and some of the strains that are really testing the system today.
All right, so to really get how India votes, you first have to understand its parliament. It's bicameral, which is just a fancy way of saying it has two houses. And here's where it gets really interesting. India uses two totally different voting systems to fill those two houses.
So, on one side, you got the Lok Sabha, which means the House of the People. As the name suggests, its members are elected directly by the citizens. Then you have the Rajya Sabha, the Council of States, and its members are chosen indirectly by the legislators in each state. This whole two-system setup is meant to create a balance, right? Balancing the direct will of the people with the interests of the individual states. Let's dig into how each of these systems actually works.
For the Lok Sabha elections, India uses a system it got from the British called first past the post. And honestly, it's about as straightforward as it gets. The entire country is carved up into 543 different areas, or constituencies. In each one, a bunch of candidates compete, and the winner is simply the person who gets more votes than anybody else. It's a pure winner-takes-all scenario.
And this image of the race really nails the concept. It doesn't matter if you win by a single vote or by 100,000. And, crucially, it doesn't even matter if you get less than half the total votes. As long as you're the first one to cross that finish line, you've won the seat. Simple as that.
Now the Rajya Sabha, that's a whole different ballgame. It uses a system called proportional representation. The main goal here is to make the Rajya Sabha a kind of mirror of the political party's strength in the state governments. So let's say a party holds 30% of the seats in a state's assembly. Well, they should get about 30% of that state's seats in the Rajya Sabha. It's definitely more complex, but it's designed to make sure that smaller parties still get a voice on the national stage.
So who is in charge of this absolutely massive process? Well, that job falls to one of the most powerful and respected institutions in the country, the Election Commission of India, or the ECI. Think of them as the totally independent, totally impartial referee of this giant democratic game.
And the ECI's independence isn't just a suggestion, it's guaranteed right there in the Constitution. Article 324 gives it complete superintendence, direction, and control over every single election. This constitutional armor means it can do its job without politicians breathing down its neck.
And let me tell you, the ECI's powers are huge. We're not just talking about setting up voting booths. The ECI decides everything from which political parties are legitimate to the little symbols they use on the ballots. And if something goes seriously wrong, like fraud or violence, they have the ultimate power to disqualify candidates or even scrap an entire election and start over. They are the guardians of the entire process. But even with this incredibly solid framework in place, the Indian electoral system is facing some major challenges. The very way votes are counted and turned into seats is being questioned more and more.
Okay, so the single biggest knock against that first-past-the-post system is this idea of disproportionality. Basically, there's often a huge gap between the percentage of votes a party gets nationwide and the percentage of seats it actually wins in parliament. And because it's a winner-takes-all system in every single race, this can have massive political consequences.
Let's look at the 2014 general election. This is a perfect example. The BJP party won 31% of all the votes cast across the country. But that 31% got them a whopping 52% of the seats in the Lok Sabha. Now look at the Congress Party. They got a respectable 19% of the vote, but that only translated to 8% of the seats. See the mismatch?
And this chart just makes it crystal clear, doesn't it? That orange bar for vote share is so much smaller than the blue bar for the seats they won. Getting over half the seats in parliament with less than a third of the popular vote is a classic outcome of first past the post.
It creates what's called a winner's bonus, where millions of votes cast for losing candidates in each constituency end up essentially not counting towards representation.
And don't just take my word for it. The Electoral Reform Society did the math and pointed out that the winning party got about 114 times more seats than they probably would have in a proportional system. And that, it raises some really fundamental questions about whether the parliament is truly reflecting what the voters wanted.
So that's one big challenge. But there's another one, and it's a bit of a mouthful: malapportionment. Here's the deal. The boundaries for those 543 constituencies are supposed to be redrawn regularly to make sure each one has roughly the same number of people. But here's the catch. The boundaries haven't been seriously updated in decades. They're based on population data from the 1971 census. And this has created some wild imbalances. States in the south, like Tamil Nadu and Kerala, which did a great job managing population growth, are now actually overrepresented in parliament. At the same time, fast-growing northern states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar are hugely underrepresented. Projections show Uttar Pradesh could be short by as many as 11 seats. What this means is that a vote in one part of the country can now carry way more weight than a vote in another, which kind of goes against the whole one-person, one-vote idea.
So with all of these challenges, you might be thinking the system is broken or on the verge of collapse. But that's not the whole story. The Indian electoral system has this long, long history of reform and adaptation. It's like a living thing, constantly evolving to try and meet the demands of this massive, energetic democracy.
I mean, just look at the timeline of progress. Back in 1988, the voting age was lowered from 21 to 18, bringing millions of young people into the fold. Then in the 90s, they introduced electronic voting machines, a total game changer that cut down on fraud and made counting so much faster. And more recently, they added the VVPAT system, which gives voters a paper receipt, adding another layer of trust and transparency.
And remember that whole malapportionment problem with the outdated maps? Well, the Constitution actually has a built-in fix for that. It's called the Delimitation Commission. This is a special body that's supposed to redraw all those constituency boundaries using the latest population data. Now, the process has been on hold for a while, but it's still the official tool designed to rebalance everything and get back to that principle of one person, one vote, one value.
And all of this leaves us with one big final question. India's election system is, without a doubt, a marvel. But it's also a system with some real quirks, a voting method that can distort results, and electoral maps that are seriously out of date. The great challenge for the future is whether this incredible democratic machine can keep reforming itself, keep adapting to make sure it truly and fairly represents the will of what is now well over 1 billion voters.